Good morning, everyone, and thank you to the Illinois State PTA for the invitation to deliver the 2021 convention keynote this morning. I'm excited to be here with all of you. I remember attending annual state and national PTA conferences fondly. The energy and excitement in the air to see old and make new friends, participate in the learning and collaborating with a generous community of parents, caregivers, school, and education leaders for the sake of our children, united in one cause, every child, one voice, which has animated much of my work in the world. I very much, as I know many of you do, miss being with you in person. I love and get energized by the rich human diversity of all of us and our stories. And so today, I come to you from one of my favorite places, my study, filled with stories of humans, written by humans, for humans. I send out virtual hugs to all of you, parents and caregivers, educators, school staff, and administrators. You have worked tirelessly to teach and support our children under impossibly difficult and trying circumstances. You have all been under excessive strain. Overnight, we had to wrestle with a worldwide pandemic, an event that humankind last experienced over 100 years ago. Our hearts have been breaking. We have been grieving and mourning. We've been struggling, pivoting, adapting, and muddling through. As we're closing out the 2021 school year, we can almost feel, smell, taste, hear, and see a glimpse of days with slightly more settled routines and the possibility of in-person learning for our children. I purposely do not use the phrase returning to normal here, because this morning I'd like to invite you to take a pause and reflect with me on how normal was not serving our kids well before the pandemic. And consider the idea that the pandemic offers us a transformational moment to reflect on our values, renew our inner landscape, and renovate our education system to focus on human-centered education and personalized, student-directed learning in collaboration with community partners. A call for renewal and renovation. When I speak of renewal, I'm talking about diving deep into our heart and creating space to notice, examine, reflect on our definition of success for ourselves and our children. When I have asked parents and caregivers in the past how they define success for their children, many shared that they'd like to raise good people who are content, caring, know they are ever evolving and a work in progress, are led by the voice inside, are present, authentic, know how to manage healthy relationships, make lasting contributions to society, find meaning and purpose, know that they're loved fiercely for who they are. In contrast, when Harvard University's Making Care in Common project asked children how their parents would define success, 80% said their parents are more concerned about academic achievement. And they were 3 times more likely to agree with the statement, my parents are prouder if I get good grades in my classes than if I'm a caring community member in class and school. Academic achievement and success are earnest goals, but we have lost our balance. We individually and collectively have elevated a very narrow definition of success and relentless pursuit of exterior accomplishments at the expense of our kids' humanity and squeezed the energy out of our children's hearts and left them empty. Happiness is also a goal that many parents and caregivers cite in raising children. And who does not want their children to be happy? We all do. Except that happiness is an inside job, as Sylvia Boorstein, in her book of the same title, wisely reminds us. It is the fruit of the labor of engaging with who we are on the inside. When we connect with our hearts, our creativity, interests, aspiration, when we journey inside and engage with our true self and create a meaningful, purposeful path in the world, live authentically and contribute our unique gifts to society, when we know we are good enough, when we know we are loved for who we are. So with all good intentions by all involved, there is a mismatch. Parents, caregivers talk about inner values, and our kids are hearing that parents and cultures' top priorities are exterior accomplishments and values like achievement, good grades, prestigious colleges, and good jobs. There is a disconnect between interior and exterior values, the inner and the outer life. Our children come into this world curious, creative, unique, and with a lot of potential. And instead of deliberately and systematically celebrating the human diversity, as the late Sir Ken Robinson encouraged us to do, we standardized the educational path and standardized the definition of success. We fashioned a rather small box into which we've been trying to pack our children with all the human diversity instead of providing a garden in which humans can flourish and bloom at their own pace. We also accepted the idea that chronic stress caused by unrelenting achievement pressure, excessive competition, and standardized testing is normal and a prerequisite for being successful. The unrelenting treadmill has left our children disconnected from their individual interests, aspirations, their humanity, and caused an inner void. Our children carry around a hole in their hearts and this pervasive feeling of not being good enough. In 2018, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation identified 4 environmental factors that put adolescent well-being at risk: poverty, trauma, discrimination, and excessive pressure to achieve. And all these factors have the power to impact our children's psychological well-being as well as their physiological wellness, which Bessel van der Kolk explains in his book, The Body Keeps the Score. Looking at the 2018 Illinois Youth Survey data, we find that 32% of 8th, 35% of 10th, and 34% of 12th graders in the state of Illinois had a major depressive episode. Our kids are not all right, and they have been telling us this for years. And we, the adults, have had trouble hearing them. Instead of trusting our children's voices and reflecting on what they were telling us, we built a system of interventions designed to ensure that our kids fit in. In other words, we have been working from the outside in. As the number of children suffering from anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, substance use, and many more, we engaged in damage control, as the 2018 Robert Wood Johnson report on adolescent well-being so aptly describes it. And now, after a year of remote school streaming into our homes, many of us have witnessed firsthand what Jal Mehta, professor at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, calls institutionalized schooling. He notes that it's been often uninspired, irrelevant, and disconnected from the world around them. Students in Illinois have shared that they find what they're learning at school uninteresting for many years. In 2018, 49% of 8th, 59% of 10th, and 51% of 12th graders reported that it is not at all true or a little true that they do interesting things at school. When it comes to feeling a sense of agency at school, over 70% of students reported that it is not at all or a little true that they help decide things like class activities or rules. And well over 60% of our students report that it is not true or a little true that they are doing things that make a difference in the world. What these numbers tell us is that we have focused on output instead of fundamental requirements for human flourishing. A number of years ago, at a high school PTSA meeting, we were discussing student stress, how students never had enough time to follow and get lost in their interests, how homework loads interfered with sleep, how little time there was for family activities or to simply be, and how every available minute of every single day seemed to be scheduled in pursuit of constructing an extraordinary resume with which to apply to colleges and universities. I suggested then, and I'm even more passionate about it now, that we can choose to discard the idea that chronic stress is a necessary requirement to being successful. At the meeting, one person replied that it was simply how the system worked. Their answer implied that the system was a construct much like a metal cage lowered down on us by an invisible power beyond our control and unyielding. The so-called system is not inanimate. We humans have participated in building it, and we can transform it. Our education system was built over 100 years ago, and at the time, I might add, it didn't include girls or a community of color. It was a standardized system to produce workers to work in factories, a system built on conformity and standardization, with set curricula and ranking children, teachers, and schools on narrowly defined benchmarks and time schedules. When our son was in the second grade, we lived in a welcoming, warm community with a neighborhood school. When you walked into the one-story school building, you could feel the rich connection among the school community, among students, parents, and teachers. Human-centered, encouraging, and vibrant. Our PTSA was thoughtful, active, and resourceful. A fabulous school. At least our community thought so, until the state testing person visited and reported that our school's test scores were lacking and in need of improvement. Stories of our successes, peer reading programs, parent involvement did nothing to sway the state testing rep. Her response was that we needed to try harder. Trying harder, more test prep, more testing, scores, and rankings to satisfy the benchmarks of an education system that has not been cultivating skills our children need in the workplace. Employers are looking for curiosity, flexibility, adaptability, problem solving, critical thinking skills, resilience, and the ability and mindset to continuously learn. Grades and rankings are not reflective of our human potential. Credentials and scores communicate nothing about our character. Where we go to school and what we do in life are no measures of our worth. Many of us, students, parents, caregivers, teachers, administrators alike, have long known this in our hearts and felt it in our bodies. According to Populous, a nonprofit organization whose purpose it is to use this understanding of individuality to bend technology and social forces towards a world where people live fulfilling lives in a thriving society, states this, and I quote, "An overwhelming majority of Americans now define a successful life as following their unique interests and talents to become the best they can be at what they care about most. Americans are hungry for a world that understands and values them, a world that is built to nurture and unleash their unique talents." End of quote. The pandemic has provided us with a transformational moment to reimagine how we live and educate our children. Let us create conditions that allow our children to connect with themselves, follow their interests where they might lead, use their curiosity, and apply their creativity. Sir Ken Robinson said it well when he observed that currently education is centered around the concept of conformity, but human life is entirely built around human diversity. Research shows that Americans want education to commit to character, relationship, and personalized mastery, which aligns with what students in Illinois, and I dare say around the country, have been sharing with us for many years. We live in a digital society and can provide personalized learning for all children. And we can shift our accountability model from standardized testing to mastery-based assessments. So do we really want to return to normal? I think not. Every single one of our children is unique, distinctive, and worthy. They arrive in the world naturally curious, creative, and wired for connection. Let us build on that. Let us work from the inside out. The renewal I'm calling for is the deep engagement with ourselves to reflect on our values and imagine a world in which our children are seen, heard, and have a sense of agency and belonging and live healthy, joyful, and wholehearted lives. The renovation piece revolves around putting our children and their uniqueness at the center and design personalized, student-directed learning with mastery-based assessments. Will it take courage and commitment, persistence and perseverance? Yes. But if NASA can put the rover Perseverance on Mars in the middle of a pandemic with scientists working out of their home offices, then I think all of us, parents, caregivers, students, educators, administrators, community and business leaders, researchers, and policymakers can reimagine the learning environment that puts our children's uniqueness and human connection at its center. Watching the Perseverance land on Mars brought tears to my eyes, and then I caught a glimpse of the sign posted on the wall in the control room. Did you notice that? It said in bold letters, "Dare mighty things." So I call on all of us to dare mighty things and use this transformational moment before us to connect our heads with our hearts, widen our gaze, and plant the seeds for the human flourishing of every child. Thank you for your kind, open, and receptive attention.